I wanted to create a video to show you what I've been doing with themes. So I've been doing this since September and then 2023, and back then the font property wasn't introduced in themes, so I've updated this solution. It's something that I've just been working on, and I just thought the community might want to play around with it. Basically, in my opinion, I think from an accessibility perspective, I think users should be able to select their own theme rather than it be dictated by the app maker, and they should also be able to select their own font. So I created this solution back in September last year, but I used a font picker and set that as a global variable, and then set all of my controls to look at the global variable. But now I'm doing it slightly differently. So let's have a deep dive. Okay, right, so let's look at themes. Let's have a look and see how a theme is constructed. Okay, so this is how themes are constructed. Name, text value, font, text value. Incidentally, I found that this whole line, you can just drop that into a variable and it will take the first value as the font, at least in a Canvas app anyway. And then colors is a record, so let's have a look at colors. Alright, so we have darker 10 to 70 and lighter 10 to 80, and then a primary. Right, so primary is the base color. So right now Microsoft has released custom themes where the maker can select a base color. That's primary. Okay, so basically this is quite easy to do. So let me show you how I did it. Right, so now that we know how a theme is constructed, we can replicate that. Right, so let me just move to font breakdown. Okay, so this is how the font is broken down. This is how the font is saved in the theme. Like I said, the first one I found is the primary font. Alright, so if you actually say the theme app.theme.font, you'll get this Segui UI, and all of the themes currently, right now, at the time of this recording, all of the themes have this whole line. Okay. Okay, so I'll tell you what I do for font selection. I give the users a list of the fonts, and I let them select whichever font they want. Okay, I'm going to choose that one. Alright, so currently using that font, and then if we then move into how you build that. Right, so what I do is I say, okay, this is really simple, right? So a red slider, a green slider, a blue slider for RGB. You select how you want to, let's say I want kind of like an olive. How can I get olive? There we go. There you go. So like an olive theme. Right, and then I get them to select a font. For each theme that they select, they can save it to their profile, and they can also say, I want the following theme to be the default when I load this app. So let's choose one that is totally different to the standard themes. Here you go, Harrington. Let's try that one. Right, and then just give it a theme name. Okay, so let's give it a name. Okay, so I've selected my colour, the font that I want. I've given it a name. I'm going to save it. Before I do that, let me show you how themes are stored. This list is available to the entire organization, and the way that the list is, it's a SharePoint list, the way that it's configured is you can only see and create items for yourself. Alright, so it's really, then after that it's very simple to pull the list of the custom themes, because it would be filter custom themes where created by email equals the person that's logged in email. The reason why I add a little GUID is because there could be multiple the same name, so somebody could say custom 1 twice, but the other reason is if the same person wanted to create 2 themes with the same name, there's no restriction for them to do that. Not saying that they would, but just in case they would, I group them by theme GUID instead of the title. Alright, so it's really simple. A unique identifier, the title, the name of your theme, the font you want to use, and then the RGB for the primary. That's all we need in the back end to produce these custom themes for the end users. Alright, so now if I save this, save, okay, now look in the back end, it says, come on, right, and there it is, Olive Garden theme with Harrington, which is the font that I selected, with the RGB color. Right, so how do we put all this together? Okay, so over here what I'm doing is I've already listed the, I'll show you, so startup. Right, so in my startup I've listed the inbuilt themes, so green theme, orange theme, platinum. These are all the Power Apps inbuilt themes, and then what I've done is I've I put that into a collection, and then what I've done is I've gone and looked at custom themes. Right, so what in production for this demo I haven't done this, but I've done filter in the organization. I've done filter custom themes created by email equals. Alright, so that's what I've done in the organization, so it only picks their ones. I add all of the custom themes that the user has created and add that to the list. So as you can see, there's the theme list, all of the internal themes as well as the custom themes, and then let's see what happens in the onChange event. Is if the value that's selected is any of the, I'm using a switch, if any of the value selected is any of the internal names, then just set it to the theme, right? Power Apps theme. So these are the internal names for this. I'm setting the GVAR app theme to the theme, and if it's none of those, then it must be a custom one. So then I do a lookup against the custom themes table and say, okay, give me the record, and then I'll build the theme. Right, now one thing I found is I can't use the custom name as of the time of this recording. I can't use the custom name, so I just borrow one. I just borrow an internal name, Power Apps theme, but then I define it with the values from the custom themes list. Right, and so if you remember, we store a font in there, so I grab the font, and then do you remember envar font append is everything after the first font, which is this long line, okay, which I'm not quite sure what it's for, but I add it. So I take my custom font and I add whatever Power Apps default themes add, and then I just build out the colors table, right, by using RGB. Okay, and color fade gives us the darker 10, darker 20, and also the numerical representation of a color inside this table. Alright, so that now if I look at gvar app theme, it has the same structure as a theme. So the name, the font, the colors, and then what I do after that is I set a global variable gvar app font, because I don't want the font that we select in the theme to be only available to the theme. I want it available to the whole app. Alright, so I set a global variable, and now that's available to. And by the way, I don't use anything in here. I found it buggy. I may use some of these, but I apply these themes predominantly to classic controls. Alright, so that's how that's building. Let's go back here. So that's how this list is built. So all of the internal ones plus the ones that I've created, which are these 4. Right, and then obviously all I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, as I select the internal ones, which all, by the way, have a font of Sugoi. Right, so that now I'm able to, and in the organization I allow them to save a default. So if they want to save a default when they start up, they can, right? All you do is just add default yes or no, okay? And then my custom ones here, this one I used Arial as the font, and this one, let's go to Olive Garden because we know that that's a funky font. There we go. So there's my Olive, and that I used Harrington for that, and as you can see I'm changing all the font, and this one I used Verdana. Right, really simple to do. Now there's one last thing to show you, and that is how do we set it up in the beginning. Right, so if I look here in formulas, I've got this variable called font append, and it's basically the default that I saw in the theme for the fonts, everything except the first font. So what I'm doing is because I don't really know what the rest of these fonts are for, and at some point I'll figure it out, but I haven't had time yet. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing everything that all of the internal themes are using, with exception to the first font. Okay, and then what I'm doing is I'm building. If they don't have a default, I'm manually building the green theme. How do you do that? Well, darker 10, 20, 30, is basically color fade. What gets stored in, yeah, it's a color, but it's a numerical representation of the color that gets stored, right? So we use color fade to achieve exactly the same thing. Right, so what I do is I say, okay, I'm going to set up a default theme so that when you start it loads the green theme. This is just a menu that I'm building. Alright, so that's how I set it up. Right, but then in themes, I say, okay, if my global variable, which is the one that I use to set the theme as they cycle through the drop down, if that's blank, if app-theme.name is blank, then take the default theme, nvar default theme, and that is me replicating, there you go, the green theme, right? So I'm saying, okay, if my variable hasn't been set yet, gvar app theme, then go grab this one, which is basically replicating the green theme, right? And we'll set that as a default. And then after that, well, as soon as the user clicks on an item in the drop down, gvar app theme gets set, and so theme then inherits gvar app theme, right? So that's how I'm setting it up. So let's go show you one more time. Custom 2 Olive Garden, and I haven't played too much with this, but one thing that I did manage to do was this slider is actually linked to the size of the font, so I can, Yeah, I can change the size of the font. This is great for accessibility because accessibility is really important to us. So not only can they choose their own base colour, they can choose the size as well. I have a maximum, an absolute max. Can't remember what that is, and then obviously the minimum. Right, and I think it starts off, I don't know, somewhere like that. So yeah, we allow them to change the size, the font size. I've linked that to all the controls, and then obviously when they pull in the theme or set a default theme, I grab the font from that and I set that as a global variable. All control, not just the modern controls. Everywhere in the app, all controls will be using the font that is pulled out of here. Something that I haven't tried and I'm going to have a look at is more than one base colour. I just haven't had time to do it. But what do you think? Let me know what you think in the comments.